Welcome back to the Peninsular War, to Albuera. Last time we deployed all the troops, and today we're going to look at the terrain. Now, the terrain is exactly as you see, with um, so the you can see the hills perfectly, and a hill, a hill, and there's more ridges. It's very hilly terrain and it's pretty steep actually. If you go there, and you will see uh, it's more steep actually in the center, but it makes sense to hold that position. And I was reading about the battle more, how it developed and what Soult wanted to achieve. And the funny thing is, one could almost say that he tried to do a mini Austerlitz, uh, by attacking the center, trying to draw the Spanish out and do this large maneuver of envelopment from crossing the ford and then fixing them in Albuera as well. It didn't work. Anyway, all the forests are close and close ground. There's some, obviously, the streams. We saw that already with the ford, two bridges. This is a river. And that's pretty much it regarding the terrain. Now, there's some, I was rereading the designer notes, and it comes down to why the ratings of the units. So we have a 2 for some of the Portuguese formations, we have 1s for some of the Spanish formations, there's 2, there's 3s, and the grading is not universal as to quality or whatever. It's a number that reflects their quality, if they are poor or not, but at the same time their organization and their drill, their numbers. So it's a mix of everything. As has David Kershaw well puts it, there was one exception. There's no granularity regarding specialist troops at this level, with one exception, which is the grenadiers, which are there under the commands of both. Damn, the counters are really small. This is the worst thing in this game, is the counters are really small, so they can be commanded by, where's the scenario? Girard? maybe. No, it's Godino and Val. Okay, as they can command. So there was only one exception to the specialty troops, but it doesn't really affect anything. The only thing is that it has a rating of 2. And what the French did was pick up the specialty. Usually the battalions had companies of grenadiers, companies of riflemen or voltigeurs, and they grabbed the companies of all grenadiers from many other formations and established uh, one force made only of grenadiers. So probably to make it as a guard unit, so to break the enemy. The artillery has no rating, as they will be destroyed pretty much if they are retreat and pursued. Cavalry has rating, of course, the highest being the Vistula Lancers, and there's even a French song about them, especially from this day, where they showed their prowesses. And the entire battle, I like this map because it doesn't glare. I think more. I mean, this is just normal paper, but I know, for example, Clash of Arms and other companies use this very nice textured paper without any glare. I love it. Okay, I don't know if we should start the game already or if there's anything that I can give more information before we start. Actually, we can go through the quick start for experienced wargamers, and it's experienced in the subject that these gamers understand the common concepts that rule the war game. So units are infantry, cavalry, and artillery. We already saw that, and there's some leaders. They have a rating number. Their strength, the actual strength of a unit, is their rating minus the number of hits they take. For example, if we have the KGL there in Albuera, if they take 1 hit, so it's a 2 minus that one. So artillery doesn't have a rating and is only eliminated by being forced to retreat. Artillery gets a limbered marker. We already saw that. Okay, the map has areas that we saw. Areas, area that have approaches. And the approaches are mostly between open terrain. While this is a hill, is also open terrain. If it would be a hill with woods, it would be closed terrain. Okay, only one infantry can occupy the approach. So, for example, this area has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 approaches. An opposing unit in the adjacent area cannot also occupy the same approach, has to fight for it or has to attack the area. Occupying the approach gives a +1 for combat, and obviously close terrain doesn't have approaches. So there's a case of Albuera, and there's also the case of the forests, even if it's onto open terrain, doesn't have approaches, right? It's only between open terrain. Okay. Closed terrain doesn't have. Okay, the play is I go, you go in a turn. Each player rolls dice for command points. What are the command points spent for? Okay, they can be used to rally a unit. So for example, we have the KGL there that already has a hit. We could rally it, rally the troops to recover points. That's one command point. So it's important to have some dice on the side to mark the command points. Let's, for example, let's say the British have 2 and the French have 4. Okay, we can mark our command points like that. So we can use command points for rally, but units that rally cannot move during their turn. Each turn time scale is about an hour, and if you think about it, trying to get your men to reform, to dress lines, to get the wounded out of the way, and everything takes time. So I think 1 hour is pretty acceptable for this era to perform a rally and not being able to move. We can also spend, let's say we did spend 1 there, so we are left with 1, and we can spend that command point to activate 1 area, which means all the units in the area can move, right? They can move together or separately in any order. So they can move all together into Albuera, for example, or we could move only 1 to Albuera and another to support the cavalry there, etc. And artillery can fire. If artillery is not in a hill, can only fire to the area adjacent to it. If it's in a hill, it can shoot 2 areas away, as long as it doesn't trace it through close terrain, and that's a house rule. I will not have them shoot over Albuera, and I will not have them shoot over the heads of the troops. It wasn't done in Napoleonic eras, unless it was really certain situations. That was not the norm. You get your troops nervous with fire going over the heads. It's not done. So technically, let's say if this artillery would be there, we could then shoot into here because there's nothing in the way. So that's another house rule. Write it down. It makes the game better. It's pretty much the only intervening ground that it can have, because if we are here, we cannot shoot into closed ground. So that's another one. So, but basically, shoot to the next zone. Okay, the movement rates are, this is important, 3 for infantry and artillery, and 4 for the cavalry. It costs movement costs. It's 1 to move from area to area. Okay, just basic is one movement point. It costs also, let's say for example that we have, let's move in the center here, that we have a unit in the approach there, right? If we want to move out of the approach to their own area, it costs one movement point as well. The same way, it costs one movement point to occupy an area, an approach, sorry. And it costs one movement point, and let's suppose we had French there. If we move to the approach, it costs 1 point. But if we move into combat, it costs 1 point plus 1. So 2 points if we attack an enemy held zone. So the synergy between zones and occupying approaches is, I would say, it's the blood of the game, while the sinews is how the different units support each other when they want to perform an attack, or probably just threaten the enemy to open a flank. But we will try to see that during the game. I will try to do the French plan as Sult did it, kind of an AI of sorts. And if you want to give input for the Allied army during the gameplay between segments, you can. But to form and then form squares of infantry, and by the way, the squares can move, we have to pay +1, of course. And the artillery can limber and unlimber. Costs also 1 movement point. Remember that artillery has 3 movement points, same as infantry. So technically infantry could, and terrain also adds movement point costs. So technically an infantry could, with 3 points, could 1, 2, and I would not be able to attack across. 1, 2, 3, right? Or 1, 2, 3. There's no, the vertex doesn't exist like we had in Fate of Hytus. So the combat phase has and this is similar to what we saw in Fate of Hytus. So there's always a lead attacker and a lead defender, except when an approach is occupied, it's always the lead defender. Okay. So technically, this is what we have as mechanics. The combat is a bit more decisive and not rather difficult. So 1 lead defender, 1 attacker, there's 1 that will lose, it will be replaced, probably lose, be replaced, this one loses, and so on and so forth, until one side retreats or gets pursued and killed, which is good not to have only infantry or just threatening with infantry. You will want cavalry on the wings to pursuit and rout the enemy as well. Uh, the post-combat happens once, of course, and if the attacker occupies the area that they attack, they gain 1 morale. For the losses, it's more harsh. So for each attack that is successful, so let's say the French attack, let's put the 2 units there. Let's say the French attack that zone and win, they win 1 morale point. But let's say the French lose this unit during the combat and the Spanish lose that unit during the combat, and these units retreat. So the French win 1 morale point, but lose 2 because they lost a unit with a combat rating of 2, and the Spanish lose 1 morale point. So the French would win 1, actually would lose 1 while conquering that zone, because they lost 2 morale points for the unit with the strength of 2, and gained 1 for conquering the zone. So they would be down -1, which pretty much would be the same as the Allied force that would lose 1 morale for the loss of 1 unit. So that's also at the command structure, what do we want to do really? And remember, it's 10 morale points, maximum of 12. I think we have a fairly fast overview of the synergies of the game. The attack is only one role affair. There can be multiple combat rounds depending on the amount of units that that the attacker wants to commit. So there's always that commitment phase, or that commitment type of gameplay, and that's important. So remember the house rule: there's no cannon fire over friendly troops and no cannon fire over close terrain, even if in a hill. So we will kickstart the game, not right now in this segment, but in the next one. So thank you for keeping up. I will write down some basic rules for the French, and we'll try to make, because the Sult's plan was not bad, it was actually good. It just relied, and this is the major fault, and that the enemy would do what he expected the enemy to do, and that's one of the more interesting things about the Peninsular War, is that the British commanders never did mostly what the French expected them to do. And you can see that with Beresford, you can see that then with Wellington, and eventually to 1815. I'm not very well versed in Napoleonics. There's people that are way more into Napoleonic's wargaming, and I really like these smaller battles. They are usually more intense, more condensed versions of bigger battles. So, if you want a good intro game to grab one of your friends, this has such a visual appeal. It's pretty simple game that has enough depth at the command and control that both will have good fun, even with your wives or offspring. Uh, it's easy to get into a good game with this, and what else? Pretty much, it's not expensive game, and it might spark an interest in the Napoleonics, right? It's a small battle, it's not this big, always with Napoleon on the field. It's a bit on the side. There's four nations being involved, and why are the British fighting along the Portuguese and the Spanish against the French? What's going on? And where is Albuera? And what were the French doing in Spain? You know, there's lots of these little questions that even, I don't know, I think sometimes many uh, US war gamers, I think for the Europeans, for the US players, is the Cold War is for the US war gamers what Napoleonics is for the Europeans, mostly. Just tell me I'm wrong, but that's the way I feel it. But it's a great setting to get into wargaming. Lots of movies about it, and obviously it's a very colorful regarding uniforms, regarding dashing charges, and yeah, it's a good game. Sorry for the, well, not sorry, but for this end of video, small rant chatty thing. Just wanted to present some fundamentals about the game before we set on the first turn. So cheers and see you very soon.